Jesus as he emerges into public ministry. We discovered that you don't need TV cameras and social media in order to draw attention. You also don't need it in order to draw opposition. As he begins to become more popular, he has begun to call his disciples, the workers alongside him. He has been doing some teaching, providing some healing, and dealing with the petty questions that others use to try to undermine him and divide his followers. As we move into chapter 6, we begin to hear some of the core ingredients of his teaching. We will soon discover how divisive it is to tell people to love one another. Our passage today comes to us from Luke 6, 27 to 38. We'll be reading it in responsibly as I read the words in yellow. I'll invite you to read aloud together the words in white. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you.
If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them.
Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back.
Do to others as you would have them do to you.
If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners expecting to be repaid in full.
But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them, without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked.
Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven.
Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you.
So you go to the market, it's time to go and get an allotment of flour, because you need flour for just about everything you cook, everything you bake. You go and the merchant has a great large barrel of flour from which he gets your allotment. Reaches in with a scoop and pours it into the container you brought. Fills it to the top. You think, well, that's great, I've got a full container. That's what I came for. But then he takes a nice, handy little tool and he tamps it down, he presses it down. Because flour, compresses. He goes back to his barrel and he comes and he tops off what you thought was a full container. tamps that down. He comes back one more time and covers the top to where it's overflowing. A good measure, we're told. More than you expected, more than you thought possible. You now have blessings overflowing in your life. More than you could have hoped for. That's the promise of living this life that Jesus is calling us to live. Not threatening us, not scaring us, not bossing us around, not trying to make us feel inadequate. He just says, this is an abundant, overflowing life, and this is how you get to it. Come follow me. And you have every power within your command to say, no, thanks, I don't want that rich, abundant, overflowing life. I'll settle for what I can get elsewhere. You're not being forced or coerced. But you are being invited. Abundance? Do you want abundance? Here's where you can find it. You think about it, if you took even a scoop and you filled it full of concrete, much more dense, much more compact in itself. But if you've ever poured a large concrete foundation, you realize that even that needs to be compacted, to be solid, to be complete. They've got these great industrial vibrating posts that go down and they vibrate it so that it settles down, is pressed down, and then topped off. Even concrete has room to be compacted. Imagine if instead of flour or concrete, we're talking about joy. Suppose we're going to God to find the gift of joy that comes to us today. We go expecting, well, I just need enough joy to get through a couple of hours, maybe a day. And instead you get this deep, abiding, overflowing joy that's not only sufficient for what you came for, but for more. Not only sufficient for you, but for the people around you. Not only sufficient for the people around you, but there's plenty yet to share with the world. Suppose you go looking for love, true, kind, gentle, faithful love. And God gives it to you beyond your ability to even measure. Suppose you're looking for hope. We're not going to get just enough hope to barely get by. The hope is going to be pressed down, overflowing. So that whatever it is you think you're wanting from God, whatever it is you truly need from God, you're going to get more than you asked for, more than you expected, more than you imagined. In fact, oftentimes we dream dreams that are too little. We see visions that are too short-sighted. We expect a God who is less generous than God truly is. We accept or settle for a life that is more empty than full. But this life, this abundance, this overflowing comes from God. Now, how do you get there? something perhaps like a swimming pool. You can dabble your feet in it, and your feet will get cooled off. You maybe giggle a little bit. Or you can dive right in. The teachings of Jesus seem to me like an invitation to just dive right in. Because he's inviting us into a life that is full of joy and grace and mercy and kindness and compassion, partly full because we are contributing to it. We're diving right in. We're part of that flow. We're not simply being invited to obey the commandments. Right? The last half of those commandments are warnings to us, guidance to us. Essentially, perhaps God just pleading with us, do not cause unnecessary pain in the lives of the people around you. Do not hurt others and in the process hurt yourself. Life is challenging enough. Why bring more pain through blindness? It's more than don't hurt your neighbor. It's more than love the people who love you. And frankly, that's hard enough sometimes. We're tired, we're worn out, we're disappointed, we're hurt. Loving someone else seems really difficult right now because I seem to be in a deficit. My tank is empty, I don't have anything left to give you. Loving the people who love us can be challenging at times. Loving the people who don't really know we're alive, which is largely the task of churches like us. Well, that's pretty difficult. We start weighing it out. Well, let's see. I can love all these people. They still probably won't know we're alive, and they won't give me anything back in return. Is that really a good investment of my time and energy and money? We start calculating things like that. Jesus doesn't invite the calculation. He just says, go do it, see what happens. A lot of people who don't even know you're alive. That's considerably harder sometimes than loving people you know who will eventually bring it back to you. But that's not even enough. He says, love your enemies. Which, if you're into this spirit that Jesus seems to be sharing, you don't have enemies. You have people who call themselves your enemies. They have people who think that you are their enemies. So we're talking about the people who have decided to deliberately do things to undermine what you're doing, to interfere with your happiness, to keep you from getting where you want to get and do what you want to do. It's everything from global terrorists to the jealous second grader who just seems to keep messing with you. People who have already decided that you are on the other side of some line that they've drawn. In the Spirit of Christ, you may look at them and, well, I don't see lines. Jesus has somehow finally got through to me and I quit drawing lines. But they still see them, and they still put you on that other side. And you can tell, it's obvious when someone has decided that you're their enemy. It's not that difficult to perceive. And so nature tells us, be defensive. The weaker parts of our nature says, be offensive. Do unto others before they do unto you. And it seems really smart sometimes. It seems really practical. It seems strong. And all this Jesus stuff sounds foolish. And worse of that, for a lot of us, it sounds weak. Church is for girly, wimpy men. Because Jesus says, love your enemies. Because Jesus says, forgive. Because Jesus says, outrageously, if they slap you on one cheek, turn and let them slap the other. Because Jesus says, if they take your coat, let them have your shirt. What? Sounds downright un-American. Sounds communist. Sounds weak. It sounds like a great way to end up with nothing. To let people just roll over the top of it. Instead, Jesus says that's the way to everything. Instead, he seems to be teaching us that there will be a day, and perhaps many of them, when you won't really care how many coats and shirts you have. You won't really care how many people call you weak and foolish. But you'll be able to look back upon your life and know that you dove in. And that you experienced the generosity of God, not just because you received it, but because you passed it on. There will be days in our lives when we won't care about those things that we let go of. And we will be incredibly blessed by realizing that we have been part of this flow of God's grace. There'll be times when not only will we realize that we have received from God more than we put into it, more than we earned, more than we thought we were worth, more than we ever expected, more than we could possibly imagine. And it's largely because we have been working with God to provide those kinds of blessings to the people around us. That we have been the ones that have filled their need for compassion. Not just enough to get by, but filled, pressed down, and overflowing. That we have been the ones who have helped meet their need for love. That we are the ones who help them find forgiveness. We are the ones who help them discover hope. That the things that are truly significant about life are the things that God has offered us and the things that we have shared. There will be times when we'll sit back and we'll realize that it has been poured out upon us and poured out upon us and poured out upon us. And it will never run out. That's quite a promise. Jesus makes so many promises. And then he expects his followers to fulfill them. Let us pray. And indeed, O God, for all the times in which you have been abundantly faithful to us, we can name names of the people who helped us see it, of the people who helped us claim it, the people who brought it to us, who poured it out upon us, the people who held our hands and held us close, who prayed for us and loved us and taught us and inspired us. Those followers of Christ who have fulfilled his promises to us. And on our good days, oh God, we even see ourselves pouring out those blessings upon others, fulfilling Christ's promise.